Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. AJ, Rudo, Megan, all coming to you live as it's the first show of the offseason, technically. I mean, the playoffs are still going on.
First show of the offseason, man.
First show of the offseason for the Avs. And what better way to start the offseason than breaking down all of the pain that we all went through and that the Avs went through on the season.
Yeah.
We did want to talk about a little bit of the shortcomings of the Colorado Avalanche this year, not just in the playoffs, throughout the season. But you cannot tell the story of this year without injuries. And while that is...
You think that's the number one story of the season?
Absolutely. I don't think it's particularly close.
Megan?
I think we are going to look back at the seasons that Rantanen and McKinnon had as the catalyst to something big brewing
I
in the
hope
next
so.
season 2.
I hope
like
you're
that.
right. I hope you're right. That's the positive take.
I actually think that's a pretty... Can we start there? Because
Yeah,
I think
go
that's
off.
I think that's a really interesting idea that, like, this season in a vacuum as an isolated season was miserable.
Yep.
No, for sure.
But if
you look ahead a little
if
bit.
you look at the
yeah.
way that McKinnon and Rantanen were, look, when this window opened, when they first made the postseason that year and lost to Nashville in the first round, they were a one-line team.
Yep.
It was Landeskog, it was McKinnon, it was Rantanen, and
Yep.
they had to scrap and claw
For every little bit.
for
Yep.
any relevance in that series whatsoever. But seeing the level that they played at in the series against Seattle, the Rantanen and McKinnon specifically, I think that's a really interesting jumping off point for the offseason. Is it's hard to expect them to maintain that level, but if they do,
Watch out.
holy shit! Like, is there a really big problem on the Western Conference's hands? In that, if the Avalanche actually ever get healthy
Don't
again,
have over 450 man games lost.
Right.
And those dudes are playing like
Right.
that.
You have to imagine when the league had Forsberg and Sakic in it, those were players that commanded respect league-wide. I think that is, to an extent, already true of McKinnon and Rantanen,
Yep.
but they join the likes in breaking records of a
Yep.
Peter Forsberg and a Joe Sakic in what they've done this season. In spite of all the adversity, I absolutely think we're in this room because Sakic and Forsberg also lived through painful Avalanche seasons, but our memory
Yeah.
of them are a lot of the high moments. And I think that this is going to be true of McKinnon and Rantanen in a lot of ways, even in spite of this season.
I really think that once the pain has subsided, once you're a couple years down the road, I really think people are going to look at this season, look at the injuries, and go, they did a lot better than they should have that year.
That's true.
Even with a
you-
first round exit. But
you look at what an extremely healthy Dallas team accomplished
yep.
in finishing behind the Avs
Yep.
in the division, and you look at where their two paths diverged in the postseason. They did lose Pavelski, but on the other side, there were big injuries to Minnesota as well, and to be honest, some like big time coaching blunders that you want to just hand away a postseason
Don't
game.
get cute with goaltending.
Yeah, no, a great way to put it. And then you look at the Avs and the challenge that they faced with a very steady Seattle group that really just kind of watched the dance between raindrops as cinder blocks just fell on the Avs. Like they just it just never stopped for the Avalanche is what I'm saying. Like their paths diverged, and I definitely do think in retrospect we will have a greater appreciation for this season in the future. I also say that and know how people talk about
Past seasons of failure.
well, and the
yeah.
Avs are like, oh, the Avs can't win a game 7, and it's like the last 2 game 7s that they've been in against Seattle and against Dallas, they have been comically compromised lineups where you're just like you go into the game and you say, hey, maybe they pull this off, but I don't think that the expectations around here were even all that high last night.
No.
For them to put the game on the ice that they did, I thought was damn admirable. And something that they can go into the offseason feeling proud of. They didn't go quietly into the good night. They fought and fought and fought and fought and fought. And this year, the Avalanche just took on the persona of Sisyphus. And that's really all there is to it.
Be a lot harder to roll that ball up that hill if the hill was super icy.
Yeah. I like that you call that giant boulder a ball.
I never liked this lore because it was always a punishment too. And there's this feeling of like, what did the Avs do to win the Stanley Cup? Like, what did they sacrifice?
Yeah. Would they trade on the front end of that?
Is this the punishment? Did they make a deal with the devil? I don't think that is the case. I think that seasons like this hurt, but they are also necessary. We look at the Vegas exit, and from that, heartbreak and hunger grew so much so that they chased the Stanley Cup the following season. I think that is similar of this, though it's a different type of heartbreak, and I think, I hate to say, but I think different types of adversity make this group mentally tougher.
I do wonder, like, because you talk about the response to Vegas, and we saw an insanely focused, like, we are winning the Stanley Cup this year team last year.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this core group, because we know the heart of this team isn't going anywhere.
Of course.
But I do wonder if this core group takes the disappointment of this season and is like, we never truly got a chance to defend our title. If they get, they get healthy, and we don't know what's going on with Landeskog, but if there's no Landeskog, then the front office has to spend that money.
Yep.
At least has to spend some of it. If not all $7 million, they got to spend
at least the front half of the season.
At least 3 or 4 of that million's got to get spent. You got to spend some of it, guys.
Yep.
And you wonder, are they going to come back with that same hunger, that anger that drove them last year, that they took all of that negativity and honed it into focus, in which they decimated the NHL in the regular season, and then had a 16-4 postseason run. We saw the way that they bounced back in Game 6 and 7. We saw that the big guns that drive this bus,
they're still gunning.
They were still all in, and they went all out, and it was incredibly impressive to me to give them that credit that those guys didn't quit. And I thought McKinnon's post-game interview was very telling when he said, look, we say all the right things, but you know that guy's human. You know that all those guys in the locker room are human, and they're watching as all these guys are dropping, looking at empty stalls and being like, these guys aren't here, knowing that those guys aren't there, and that there's no reinforcement go. Brad Hunt played last night at forward. There were no reinforcements left. Because not only, and I think this is something that we will talk about when we get a little more into the Eagles season, but the war of attrition that the Avalanche lost this year was organizationally
outrageous.
It wasn't even just the Avs. Mm-hmm. The fact that, so there are 50 NHL contracts that teams are allowed to sign players to. Okay,
they
50.
Run out of defensemen. They ran out of
them. All right, there are 50 contracts. All right, you have 23 roster spots in the NHL. 41 players suited up for the Avalanche this year.
It's insane.
Think about 41. There are some teams that only have 43 NHL contracts signed. 41 guys suited up for the Avs this year. You think about the havoc that wreaks, not only on the Avalanche, but on the Eagles, on your development process, on your leadership group in both of them. Co-captains this year in Loveland
not with the Eagles.
ended up not playing for the Colorado Eagles.
And then the captain they do select hasn't played since February 19th. Cronin estimated it to be around 53 players that suited up for the Eagles this season. That is understandably different because of the PTO situation.
But still,
shipping in PTOs in and out. It was like an assembly line of PTOs.
Cronin told me he didn't remember all of their names.
I believe it.
There was one time he actually said the wrong name for a player in a post-game interview.
Some of those guys are getting called up from the ECHL, like from teams that I have never even heard of.
Almost all of them were.
Yeah, right.
And like guys that have like been playing in Canadian University for the last couple of years.
It's not like this is part of the Avs farm system at that point. It's just bodies.
And I bring this up. I bring this up to mention that because there were people who were like, oh, well, Colorado's development system is such trash that they didn't have any bot. And it was like, guys,
nobody has that many bodies.
Like, it's impossible to believe that anybody would have survived this.
And I think we look at, well, who was supposed to be next man up? Like, who in the development pipeline was the closest to being NHL ready? Well, they're not on the team anymore. Like, Martin Kaut is no longer here. Shane Bowers is no longer here. This has paved a way for the next line of prospects who are still a year or so out, especially given this year. I think they're going to be a little bit behind schedule in ways because they lacked consistency.
For sure.
Yeah, and that lack of consistency it was injuries of their own, and then it was
the players around them as
it was
well,
the lineup attrition that took
100%.
place around them where they got no stability whatsoever. When you talk about a lack of stability, you're talking about a lack of development.
Yep.
You need a stable environment, and it just wreaked absolute havoc on the whole organization. And the Eagles finally stabilized after the deadline, where it was like, this is the group that we have. There's no longer
there's nobody left to call up. You're done.
There's no longer 6 call-ups going up and down and
until
shuffling.
they added 6 college players.
You're right. And then the 6, like all the college players, like these are reinforcements they needed.
But they're also new. And so they have to be reintroduced to systems games before the playoffs.
Right.
And that, like, it just goes to show, even beyond the Avs injuries, you have someone like an Alex Bocage who just, you get down to the end of the Eagles season, he can't play because his shoulder explodes.
It was necessary, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, and then you talk about guys that you're excited about, the Jean-Luc Foutis of the world, and
Even
injuries.
he's getting hurt.
Injuries
Not
everywhere.
only is he getting hurt, but there was a period of time he was getting looks on PP2 with the Colorado Avalanche.
Yep.
Now, that's exciting for someone like me who is a Foutie appreciator, but it is not exciting for the Colorado Avalanche fan base to see Foutie on PP2 for the Colorado Avalanche.
When he's just not there yet.
No, exactly.
Like,
Like that is the state of things for the Avs this year.
you get excited when you see that guy in a preseason game because you're like, all right, what could he do against with some of the... And some of the lineups that the Avalanche iced this year looked like we joked about it at the time. This is a preseason lineup.
Brad Hunt played forward in a game 7.
Yeah, 41 seconds of ice time.
He had a bad introductory shift, and it was just
That
okay.
that was
yeah.
it. Yeah.
We
can't be
were
doing
like,
this.
oh my God, Brad Hunt might be a terrible forward. And it was like, yeah. Bednar was like, oh my God, no, we're not doing that again.
When they carried him kind of as the extra man all this time, he was practicing as a forward a lot, but that's obviously so different from gameplay.
Yeah.
And-
Game 7 in the
Yeah,
Stanley Cup playoffs
right.
play.
Yeah, it was. It's. I mean, honestly, like it really is a little comical to talk about just the how bad it stacked up this year, and that it got to
not funny.
I tweeted it out last night. I'm like, Evan Rodriguez is signed 2 weeks before training camp, and in Game 7, plays 21 minutes for you, and is your 4th best forward.
There were games this season where the Avs had one of their top 6 players.
Yeah.
One.
It was Mikko.
And he would play great by himself. It's crazy because we throw around the number of whatever 460 man games lost, not including the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I don't think people wrap their head around that number really.
Yeah. Well, and it almost gets lost a little bit because both Vegas and Colorado had 400 plus man games lost this year, and both won their divisions, which is something that teams that have 400 games man lost don't make the postseason.
Yeah. Let alone win
The
division.
postseason, let alone win the division. And So I just think, and you look at where Vegas is right now, and you look at the success that they're having. Part of that is because Mark Stone got healthy. Their big guy got healthy there. We'll see if the goaltending can hold up in the postseason, whatever. But that never happened for Colorado. It got worse for them. And
they got to the postseason, and Landeskog said, "Yep, I'm not playing."
Well, and it just continued. I mean, you talk about, the depth didn't score and the depth didn't do this, and but Andrew Cogliano and Darren Helm are supposed to be a big part of this.
And they both get injured in the series.
Exactly, both get injured.
Frustratingly so.
Yeah, I really don't want to gloss over the fact that they were injured at the hands of extremely questionable
One of them not even
hits.
a penalty called.
Yeah. And they get injured, and you do lose Val Nichushkin for the series due to personal reasons. It's just it really is just crazy to me. I mean, it's
just truly a team that never could get back up on their feet and find their balance at any point.
Lost in the shuffle is Josh Manson.
Yep.
Because when he came back, it
wasn't there.
He was still hurt. He was compromised. And we saw it. And we're watching him, and we're like, we know Josh Manson is significantly better than this.
Yep.
And it was just not.
Just couldn't do it. It's tough.
It was just not going to. It went the way that it did.
Can't cure all of the Avs injuries, but maybe can cure your postseason hangover. Athletic Greens. They've got you covered. Go check them out today at athleticgreens.com/avalanche to order yours today. It's great for you. 75 different vitamins and minerals, a bunch of probiotics and adaptogens in it too. It's a great way to start your day, get yourself healthy, boost your immune system. A lot of athletes use it as part of their daily workout routines. So it's just good for you. Just 1 cup in your cup of water every single day to make you feel good, feel better about life, and get some jump in your step, as they say. Not guaranteed to prevent injuries if you're playing NHL hockey, but in your daily life, it'll make you feel better. Go check it out today again at athleticgreens.com/avalanche to let them know we sent you over there. When you order, you get a year's supply of vitamin D included for free to take control of your health today with Athletic Greens. And then, when you're feeling healthy, when you're feeling spry, you can jump over to Volo, where you can play some sports of your own.
Love the word spry.
Yeah?
It only gets applied to old people. Only. You've never heard somebody that's 35 years old called spry.
I don't feel very spry, and I'm not 35.
I feel like I would describe myself as spry, but I do think I have the mind of an old lady. A person at the DMV told me that once. She said, "You talk like an old lady."
What?
First of all, who's conversing at the DMV? Weird.
It's true. Don't talk to me at the DMV.
Second of all, rude, lady. That's straight up rude.
It was like the agent working there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't just a stranger.
In that case, you're allowed to talk to them.
Mm-hmm. Go over to Volo. You can hit up volosports.com/Denver today. Use DNVR10 to get $10 off. They have tons of different sports leagues across pretty much every sport you can imagine. You don't play full contact where someone's going to check you in the neck, but you can have some fun with kickball, soccer, basketball, football, bowling. I think they have volleyball and softball as well. They got a million other sports.
Yeah.
I can't play them. I can't name them all. DNVR has a drop-in team for the bowling league, so if you want to bowl with some of the homies, that's always an option. They're just a fun time. A great adult sports league. And the best part is you pay in, and it goes to the Volo Kids Foundation that helps provide free sports and camps to kids in each Volo city. So you're helping the kids play sports too. You can get their monthly membership program, the Volo Pass, where you can drop into activities pretty much every single night of the week, unlimited pickups, all sorts of that stuff. It's $20 a month. For 3 months, or you can get the yearly pass for $200 a year, and you can also try it out, the beta version, just $10 a month for the first 3 months. So it's a great deal. Go check out Volo. Go get your sports on, especially now that the Avs are out. No excuses. You're in the off season. You can play some sports. All your time is not taken up.
I know the DNVR bowling team was looking for homies tonight
Yeah.
on Nuggets playoff night. So
Yeah, it's gonna be tough with the Nuggets.
yeah,
on
well,
Nuggets
and
nights, but
I was like, I would love if the Avs group was like, hey, let's all just go bowling together. But also, it's like the day
Yeah,
after
not-
the season
not
ended,
today.
and
Not
and the
today.
answer was hell no,
I tired.
hell no. I am not going. I am not driving through the city to go bowling tonight. Yeah, had it been Thursday, I would have been all
sure.
in. But like
Yeah.
tonight, I was like,
not happening.
it's just a no go for me.
Again, volosports.com/Denver to get in on the
It's
action.
an awesome community too.
Oh,
When
they're great,
When
yeah.
they all come into the bar after,
They all vibe,
it's,
man.
It's super cool.
Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook.
We talk about plus minus in here.
We've talked
Love plus
enough about the injuries. I do
So
want to
good.
get into some of the things the Avs did poorly and some of the things the Avs did well this year. And while I understand it's impossible to untangle some of these things from the injury conversation, and you have to understand the roster the Avs are icing at any given time is always going to be affected by that. When you look at this season, I think at times the Avs were their own worst enemy.
Taves was not good in the series. Guy had 9 points, man.
Yeah, he was bad in game one.
Certainly in game one.
He had a mistake in game two, but also came back and won that game.
Yeah,
So, I don't know.
that's crazy.
Anyway, but a perfect example. Taves mistakes in game one.
Be curious. Were there? Can we let's go through some. Just were there some guys that you thought you were left wanting with a little bit? Because I know we talked about all the depth needed to score.
Sure.
But there were some guys that I thought actually played pretty well.
Yeah.
And then there were some guys that I thought were total no-shows in the series.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
'cause I think Taves is like a high-profile guy that had some obvious, like there were some problems.
But also ended up fine.
But you talk about a guy that finished the series literally with 9 points in 7 games, and it's like,
So
it's really, when you're that productive, it's really hard for me to believe that he was worse than that defensively. I don't think that was the case.
the biggest struggles for me were JT Compher
Okay.
and a little bit different, but Bo and Byram on the back end. Not that he played poorly, but it just never quite came this year.
So in Studs and Duds last night, I put Byram and Gerard together
Sure.
and said, hey, the two of them combined for 5 assists in 7 games.
Yeah.
I felt like they needed a little bit more out of that.
And that goal that gets taken away from Bo
Sure.
is maybe enough to.
But even then, I mean, that's not.
That's a whole different world.
Yeah.
You never know.
And that was like the game they ended up winning, right?
Yeah. So it is what it is. And then for the Avs' actual depth, I would pick Logan O'Connor as the 3 guys I would have liked more from in the series. Again, understanding that is JT Compher playing over his head at 2C? Maybe. Is Logan O'Connor playing over his head in the lineup because of injury? Maybe. Bo, I think that's a little bit less true. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Megan?
I won't push back on the Logan O'Connor call out. And I think this is going to be true of our evaluation of the series as a whole, is that because
We dared say something negative about Logan O'Connor.
The cops are on the scene.
He
Damn
literally called
right.
the cops on us.
I'm not going to push back because they are. Get them, fellas.
Yes, officer. This person right here. This podcast right here.
I'm not feeling spry enough to run from the cops today.
This is kind of true of. First of all, I thought Evan Rodriguez had a good postseason. This
Agree.
isn't a criticism, but like
Agree.
I even feel like Evan Rodriguez shouldn't have been a second line top 6 option
Yeah.
in this. But because of the state that they're in, he had to be. And I thought he took that on well.
A topic for another day. Evan Rodriguez may have just straight up stolen JT Compher's job in these playoffs.
I do
but-
want to address how badly I want Evan Rodriguez to return and how much he straight up said he also wants to.
I hope so.
We were talking about this off air last
He
night.
genuinely loves it here so much that I know that if he could come back in the $2 million range, similar to what he was here for this season,
in a heartbeat.
I know he could be worth more than that somewhere else, but I feel like I don't want to. Sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack.
No,
on
it's
this.
fine. That's what
but
happened.
I feel like if it's a difference of $1 million somewhere else versus coming back here where he said in his own words, this is a team designed to win Stanley Cups. My family loves it here. I think he could be willing to make that leap.
We talked about offering him 3 or 4 year deals.
Yep.
Last night after the show was over because, the second half of the season, you definitely were like, buddy, what's up here?
Definitely.
But he showed up in the playoffs.
But
yeah.
the postseason, he got up. He gives you points in 5 straight games. He doesn't score a point in games 1 or game 7.
But the middle foot.
But he gives you a point in 5 straight games. You're talking about depth scoring here.
He was the one guy who did it.
Yeah. You're looking at him and saying he was a little more consistent than Arturi Lehkonen.
That's my criticism from the series.
That's fair.
And
Definitely
Lehkonen, when he played well, he was an impact guy.
100%.
He was very good. When he wasn't that, he was nothing.
And the sidetrack though with Logan O'Connor, and it's true of Evan Rodriguez in a different sense, and maybe even Arturi Lehkonen, is that no one was playing alongside who they were meant to play alongside
Absolutely true.
as this team
Yeah.
was envisioned earlier into this year. And
Yeah.
so that's true of Logan O'Connor. The success he had was with a line of Andrew Cogliano and Darren Helm. Those players don't make it through this series. That line really didn't get to exist. And I think that is going to point to some of the struggles Logan O'Connor has, but I think it's fair to have wanted just a pinch more. With Arturi Lehkonen playing the top 6 role, he does show up, at least like in, I forgot, I had it in front of me too. Let's see. It's like the 2 goal, but one was the empty net goal. That was game 6. That was an important game.
Yeah.
That's important. I don't want to discount that.
performance.
But I do feel like the games where the Avs as a whole weren't executing very well, he was someone they needed to be visible even more, even just on the heavy forechecking presence that he brings, especially in the absence of Val Nichushkin. It's hard to put it on one player's shoulders, but that's what left me wanting with Lehkonen.
It's hard to put it on one player's shoulders. He's also the dude offside on the game-tying goal in Game 7. Like,
Where he doesn't even attempt to
Yeah.
drag the foot.
Yep.
There was no. He just blew that.
yep.
You look in game 5 of the 2-on-1 on the back door where he
just
misses
misses
it.
it.
Yeah,
Yep.
he just flubs it.
Yep.
Has a puck go through his feet on the back door on a centering feed later in the game. I mean, you could definitely look at Arturi Lehkonen and be like, but at the same time, once again, the same thing is true for Lehkonen as it was for Rodriguez. Although we expected Lehkonen to be top line, top 6 all year, he
Yep.
was never supposed to be this important.
Not
Right.
wrong. Because Gabe Landeskog was supposed to exist.
You're
because
talking-
Val Nichushkin was supposed to play in this entire playoff series.
Right. Like when they built this team over the last summer,
Yep.
you were looking at Arturi Lehkonen saying, we don't know who the center is,
Yep.
but we love our wings, and Arturi Lehkonen's our 5th best
As the
guy.
5th guy, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was just tough. That's tough. I mean, that's a tough. Trying to have him replace Nichushkin, who was just shy of a point per game player this year, and Landeskog, who we know is very, very good.
Yep.
Arturi Lehkonen got a $4.5 million deal for a reason. He's just not valued in the same way, and was appropriately paid. Like, got a big raise and is worth that money easily. But you're just talking about that guy is glue for your top 6,
Definitely.
not
Well, and
prime piece there.
and if that's the role he's being asked to play, I don't think you have a problem with this playoff series from him.
Oh yeah, no, I mean,
100%.
He's at 6
I'm dis-
points in 7 games.
I'm
as the
disappointed.
5th option.
I'm disappointed with the individual things that I remember about Lehkonen.
for sure.
But on the whole, you are looking at you do look at other guys and you do say, okay, look, I felt like there were plenty of positives to pull from this postseason from both Alex Newhook, Lars Eller.
Yep.
But I'm sorry,
Production-
one assist.
Offensive production was
Newhook
not
had
there.
one assist.
Yep. And it was off a
it's-
face-off.
I'm sorry, but it's just not good enough.
Well, and that's
It's just not good enough. I love Lars Eller, and I thought that he ended up being a pretty good fit, and I thought that he actually was going to really, have a moment somewhere along the line. And
I mean,
it never came. And we saw he was an animal in game 6.
The point that all of these guys that we're getting at is the Avs are asking a lot of people to rise above or rise to the occasion in
Yes.
these playoffs. And
Yes.
I think McKinnon did. I think Mikko did. The big guys did. But beyond them, Erod's the only one that I really feel like played above his station. The rest of them, you wanted a little bit more out of.
Yeah. And you're not asking for a ton.
Right.
You literally lose multiple games in the series by 1 goal.
Yep.
And you're like, just 1 goal. Yesterday, last night, game 7.
Yep.
Just 1 goal from any of those guys.
Yep.
For Byram, Gerard, Eller, LOC. We were rewatching part of the game last night because we were still here so late, but LOC on the back door slamming his stick on the ice. He wants the
Doesn't
pass.
even receive the pass.
Doesn't get
yeah.
it, doesn't get it. And then when it does, it goes right through his stick, and you're just like, yeah. And then who's the pass from? It's from Byram. You're talking about guys that it was just misfiring everywhere in the depth where it sucks. And really, like JT Compher, I think I wrote about it in both games 6 and 7. As the 2C, was it asking him a little too much? Yes. We knew that all year long. He had a 52-point year, which is a perfectly fine 2C. Like,
Yep.
whoever the Avs go out and get to be their 2C this summer, if they go out and they put up 52 points next year, that is a fine 2C production level.
But 2 points in 7 games in the
But-
playoffs isn't good enough.
But 2 points in 7 games, and you're talking about one of their worst possession players in the series.
Yep.
They tore him up.
Yep.
And we saw this was also true with Compher in the Vegas series. No Kadri. He has to elevate. He has to try and play that
can't
job.
do it. Yep.
He cannot do it. It was bad enough that they moved him off of 2C in games 5 and 6 to play right wing next to Lars Eller.
Yep. They put Lars Eller as their 2C because it got that bad.
I felt too that was something Lars Eller when the team wasn't looking like they still had life in them and they needed one good energy shift. I felt like that came from whatever line Lars Eller was on.
I agree with that.
I thought that Eller ended up like, you cannot go a series without producing. Now,
That's the tough part.
It's a little frustrating because Lars Eller had 2 assists taken away in
Taken,
one
yeah.
game.
Yes.
So Eller's interesting, right? Because I feel a lot of this series, Eller knew which buttons to push.
Yeah.
When the Avs needed an energy shift, he'd get down there, he'd forecheck, he'd cause chaos. When the Avs needed to settle down a bit, you'd see him grab a puck, circle back, be a little bit calmer with it. He just had a really good read on the emotions that the Avs needed. But
That hit that he laid too.
yeah, he dropped the guy. Him and Erod both were laying
Yeah,
people out.
Erod.
Yeah.
Didn't know you had it in him.
The more you know. And again, you're finding good stuff in the bad at times because 0 goals from your bottom 6 just isn't good enough. I get their dudes playing over their head at times, but 0 is not enough.
You look at, and there were a lot of people on our chat last night upset about Newhook, but like last night you look at it and you're like, dude, Alex Newhook was flying around
Arguably
last
their
night.
best bottom 6 player.
I thought he had a good game and he didn't finish it. Classic bad luck nonsense though. Him being involved in the deflection on that first goal.
Yeah.
Both Myers and Newhook.
Yeah.
Just the unfortunate story of Myers' season being weird goals scored for him, off him, apparently.
Yeah.
But Newhook, you're right. His speed in Game 7, I feel, is why they won more battles than they had in games prior and why they had a little bit more of an edge in the offensive zone. Not like single-handedly Newhook, but that was an important part.
Yep. He was flying in that game for sure. And, obviously it didn't connect and result in anything. And that's why the Avs are sitting at home now.
Yeah. And like
But-
Newhook, we've consistently said it's fair to want more there.
Yeah.
100%.
And expectations have to go up for him
But
next year.
when you look at that game and you see Newhook getting involved in everything,
Yeah.
and then you see that game from Logan O'Connor where he barely ever touches the puck all night,
Yeah.
and it's just
And this is a solid reminder of like we talk about Logan O'Connor like we love Logan
Yeah,
O'Connor, the
right.
energy guy.
Call it
the-
out, guys.
He's like the energy guy. He's a great story. Played at DU. We love Logan O'Connor. Very pro LOC podcast, but we have to remember that in a fully healthy lineup, that guy's probably a fourth line right wing.
And I think
A fourth line right wing, and we're talking about where was LOC all series, and it's like we're talking about a guy that should be playing 11 minutes a night on a fourth line here.
And this is the problem for the entire Avs season, though, is they didn't have enough guys who could elevate their game. And no team has enough guys who could elevate their game for the amount of injuries the Avs sustained. But it just felt like when they needed one, there wasn't enough there.
Yep. And it ended up like nobody's sitting around mad at Ben Myers. Right?
Have you seen Twitter?
Okay.
They're like, launch him into the sun.
Really?
Send him to the American League forever.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Stop.
Bad.
That's absurd. But like you do look at a guy like LC and you're like, you do have some level of expectation here. Because he does get himself involved in scoring chances often enough that you're like, buddy, you got to finish more than 1 out of every 25 of these things.
Yeah.
And in a playoff series, that could be the difference between where we are right now, talking about, doing a post-mortem on the season and them making overtime last night. And then we'll see.
Well, Seattle showed us it's the difference.
Yeah.
The depth scoring that they had and the Avs just didn't.
Yep. It ends up being the difference in the series in many ways.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting year. There are a couple other things I want to get to, but before we do that, we are brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. You can use code DNVR when you sign up with DraftKings. Obviously, you can get amazing odds boosts every single day, but they have very many things when it comes to options. When you make a new account with the DNVR code, you can bet $5 on any pregame money line in the NBA playoffs, and you get $150 in bonus bets if the team wins.
So many bonus bets for DraftKings, man.
Dude, the number of bets you can go in there right now, and it's like, hey, make this bet, and if it loses, we'll just give it back to you.
Yeah, I have been making parlays every day because DraftKings is giving me
Free ones.
the same
Literally
game
free
parlay
ones,
bonus
yeah.
bet where I put down a 4-leg parlay in a game at plus 1,500. Throw $5 on it. Know that hey, if I win
Doesn't
this,
hit, I just still have $5.
yeah, if I win this, awesome Yahtzee. That's what I want. If I don't, they give it right back to me.
Every day.
Yeah,
Every day of the NBA playoffs, you could just get a free bet.
yeah, it's been nice.
Might as well jump on
I
it.
should probably stop losing those bets though, and actually try winning
hit
one.
one eventually, probably.
Yeah.
Should be the plan.
That's what I'm saying.
You can get the DraftKings Sportsbook app today. You can opt in to get the same game parlays. Of course, with a new account, use the DNVR code to get the $5 for $150 in free bets. Look, tons of options out there. You can bet on sports that aren't even really sports if you want to. I think the chess Grand Championships or whatever they're called just ended, so you missed out on the chess betting, but no Magnus Carlsen this year, so it was a tough bet. Go over to DraftKings, use the DNVR code. You must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See DraftKingsSportsbook.com or the show notes down below for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. And it's all void over in Ohio. And then, when you got a little bit of extra cash from DraftKings, head on down to Illegal Pete's. Get yourself a delicious burrito with your winnings. 10 different locations in Colorado, so no excuses. I don't care if you're in Colorado Springs. You still have Illegal Pete's that you can go to. Check them out. They're fresh ingredients. The burritos are just amazing. Regularly would see people go at intermissions down there during Avs games to go get their Illegal Pete's and bring it back to the bar. So you know we love them here. They also have happy hour from 3 to 6 p.m. with delicious margaritas. So check them out. Illegal Pete's. Get your burrito on today. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I think we've talked a lot about the shortcomings of the team. I do think we need to talk about the shortcomings of the front office. While there are some shortcomings there, a lot of people have overblown the trade deadline.
Well, they've just made up.
How it went down.
Yes, they have just fictionalized where the Avalanche were at the deadline and been like, it's very easy today on this day to sit here and say they didn't do enough at the deadline. Yeah. They should have used that. They should have used Landy's money specifically.
Well, so there's two things I want to dispel. First of all, at the deadline, everyone believed Landeskog was coming back for the playoffs.
Yeah, and when we say everyone, we mean the people that matter, the people that were making
in the organization,
even Landeskog himself.
Whatever,
right?
But
Gabe was like, "Well, I'm for sure coming back for the playoffs."
All right, March 15th. Okay, JK playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay, not yet.
Right, and it obviously didn't work out that way, but everyone thought he was coming back. One, two, the idea that Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic didn't make a move because they didn't want to is not accurate. They were working the phones that entire day. Up to the deadline, they were trying to get a deal done, and it didn't work out. And it's fair to say they needed to do a better job and get something done.
We, on deadline day, said that we were disappointed that they didn't do more, but it didn't have anything to do with Landeskog's money.
Exactly.
It had nothing to do with that. It was, we felt like they needed more help.
I liked Lars Eller, but I would have liked more.
Yeah.
I liked Matt Nieto well enough, but I would have liked more.
How sad is it that we're talking about all these guys who didn't score a point, didn't even mention Matt Nieto's name in that list.
Yep.
Played all 7 games.
It's not even like the big swings. Patrick Kane, Ryan O'Reilly. That isn't where my expectation was. I look at Nino Niederreiter and how cheaply he was acquired, and I think, wow, that might have been a nice addition.
And I get role-wise they're different, but do you feel a little bit better about the defense if they went out and get John Klingberg? And I get at the time they didn't know Jack Johnson was going to get hurt in warm-ups of game 1 and where Josh Manson was exactly.
And they knew Eric Johnson was healing at superhuman speed.
Right.
Yeah, late career Eric Johnson turned into fucking Wolverine. Like, what happened?
But also, he cost a 4th-round pick.
Right.
So it's not like the cost was outrageous.
It was hard, right?
Yeah.
In hindsight, to look at that.
You know what was really hard, to be honest with you? More so than John Klingberg, it was looking at the prices that Minnesota paid for Marcus Johansson and Gustav Nyquist. Guys that played huge roles in the success that Minnesota was able to have.
Yep.
And you're looking at that and you're like, good Lord. I mean, at the time, everybody was obsessed with Max Domi, and we know what's up there.
Yeah.
That's an important call out, though, in the terms of due diligence from the front office. Like, there were options that they considered and turned away. Like, nope, not for us. Not a good fit.
Right. And because, I mean, would you rather, we're sitting here with having the Lars Eller conversation, would you rather they have given extra assets for even more guys and them been bad fits just because you wanted a guy that you'd heard of? I mean, it was it didn't feel great at the time. It feels bad today. They were also in no man's land. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place, and there was no way that you could,
with the information they had at the time.
Yeah, there was no way that you could fully confidently proceed in any direction because they were juggling a lot of different things at the time, and it was just tough.
Yep.
Honestly, like, it was just tough. Yeah, I mean, the Tolvanen claim was an interest. Like, we wanted Colorado to put that claim in on Eli Tolvanen. Mm-hmm. I feel like they did miss the boat on a guy like Jacob Vrana.
And again, this is the part where we're saying, hey, we're disappointed they didn't do more.
Yeah, especially with, I understand why Colorado didn't go the Vrana route because he was signed for another. There was another year on that contract, and if it doesn't go well, the Avs don't have the flexibility to just be like, well, $2.6 million, we can just live with it. That's not the way that's not the world that they live in, and who knows? Who honestly knows? Vrana might go out and totally do nothing in St. Louis next year. I think he's probably too talented of a player for that to happen. I was a big proponent of, hey, if they will eat part of that contract, they ended up eating half of it. I would have loved that kind of deal. It's fine.
Yep.
Like, it's easy to look at the things that worked
After the fact.
Yeah, and then you look at Minnesota, I think Brad even just said Minnesota was the winner of the deadline.
And out in the first round. Yeah.
And they go down 4-2.
Yep. Avs won more playoff games.
It's like it's you look at that and
Well, and here's the other.
There's just a retconning going on here, pretending that
the other part of this that someone said Patrick Kane in the chat. Patrick Kane was only ever going to New York.
Yeah.
And a lot of those big names you look at, the only one the Avs really had a chance to be in on was Ryan O'Reilly, and Toronto just had more to bid on him than the Avs ever could have.
And St. Louis had more reason to say, hey,
Keep him the hell out of here.
All
yeah.
things being equal, we really don't want to do that.
Yep.
And Toronto also got Achari in that deal as well.
That was a good.
And that was more assets for St. Louis, and I don't know that Colorado
was going to make that work.
Yeah, I don't know that they were going to do that.
Jonathan Taves dealing with long COVID at the time. Adam Henrique gets hurt like 4 days before the trade deadline, and no one knew when he was going to be back. A lot of the options just disappeared in front of the Avs' eyes when it comes to those things. So
yeah, especially, top six centers just aren't readily available in the NHL. Deadline, summer, there's not a ton of them that teams are just happily moving around. It's a tough spot to fill, and they're going to have to do their work this summer. I think when you go into the summer, you say that is the number one goal of your summer now. You need to answer some questions
of your internal guys.
Sure. Well, and you need to know what you have in terms of Landeskog's money to spend. Is that a serious thing, or if you're expecting him back early in the season? Okay, but you have to do some homework there, and you have to be prepared to move some of these assets. The few assets that you have left, you do have a first round pick still. Which will be in the 25 to 27 range.
Yep. It should be, with Boston out, it should be at least 26.
Yes.
Depending on what happens with Vegas in round 2, it could be Carolina. 25. Yeah.
Yep. So 25, somewhere in that range.
Yep.
They will pick in that spot. So great.
Yep.
But that's an asset that they can move, and that's, I think, their number one goal this offseason. They've got to get that Tuesday thing figured out.
I agree, and I think that's where the real evaluation for Chris McFarland as the GM should be made is after next season, depending on off-season moves that get made and then how the season shakes out. Because I think not only was this an extremely weird year for the Avs as players, it's weird for a GM too. They take a lot of their swings, not necessarily huge leaps at last year's deadline. They even enjoy some of these acquisitions so much, right? They get re-upped.
Yeah.
And so I never had a high expectation that they needed to do much at this last deadline because they were supposed to be more prepared. But there were things they just couldn't prepare for in terms of injury and the uncertainty surrounding Landeskog that I'm looking to the summer more optimistically than I would have at this deadline. Like, even if I could go back in time and instruct them to make more moves around the deadline, I probably wouldn't, because I have more hope of what they'll be able to get done in the offseason than what would have been available this last deadline. And I think that they're going to better cater to their needs in the offseason based on what's available.
Unless Chris McFarland has healing magic that could have saved the Avs 100-man games lost, I don't know how you can be that upset with him this year. Again, I think you can be a little disappointed with the trade deadline, understanding the context of it.
I think you can look at certain things. I think it was, to be fair here, like,
we can go long, right? The Nuggets are not after us. Okay, cool.
To be fair, I also want to say, look, the guy, the whole Morgan mania thing, Dennis Morgan wasn't an Av at the start of the year.
Yeah.
That guy took a paperclip and got, I don't know, a Lego. He got something
traded
useful
up to a ballpoint pen that actually writes.
He got something useful out of that situation where They took a Dryden Hunt waiver claim
and turned it into
didn't work.
a guy who helped you win the Central Division. in the
Traded
regular
him for Dennis
season.
Malkin,
Yeah.
who scored a bunch of big goals, helped you win the division.
Yep.
Like, okay, but like, there's something you would have liked the Tolvanen claim, but also the Avs have been easily one of the most successful teams on waivers over the last several years.
Yep.
You know, it's. I guess it's hard for me to like crush a team and be like, well, you should have claimed the one guy that worked really well in the place that he landed. We don't know, even if Tolvanen had landed here, we don't know that he would have worked out here the same way.
For sure.
There's no guarantee. I think he would have. I think his style and I think the way that he plays, I think Jared Bednar would have loved him, and I think it would have been nice to have him in this series and not have him playing against you. Would have been great. But I just, you know,
Yep.
I guess I have a hard time beating up the front office too much
And
on this one.
I'm not there yet. It's hard to go back at it a second time. There are reasons. It's very difficult, and it's hard to keep a team the same 1 year into the next, and then the injuries just added a whole other layer that the verdict is not out for me. I'm giving him way more of a chance.
And, you know, if they get through this upcoming free agency and they don't fill their holes, if they get through this next trade deadline and they have a good chance and don't fill their holes, then you start wanting a little bit more. But on the other side of that, expecting every acquisition to be Arturi Lehkonen, you're going to be disappointed a lot because they don't usually work out that well.
Well, and at some point, the team's supposed to be sort of complete. Like, if every year there's new huge holes, then that isn't really sustainable, whatever it is that you're building. And so
It's really poor planning.
exactly. So you don't want there to be like, well, we didn't do anything this year. Like, the hope is that the team becomes more and more complete as it lets on. Obviously, there are different circumstances involving the cap that also shape that conversation. But I just don't think this was a year that they expected to need to fill so
That
many
many
holes
holes.
beyond 2C. That one was
Yeah.
always on the table. That is
Yeah.
a fair criticism. I will never be upset about people taking issue with that.
Totally. And when you talk about the depth of the team and all that, like we've talked about, Arturi Lehkonen was supposed to be their fifth best forward. And Evan Rodriguez is not supposed to play nearly 22 minutes in Game 7.
Yep.
Evan Rodriguez is supposed to be a middle six guy for you. We were like, he signed and it was like, maybe he's 2C.
Yep.
Maybe it's JT Comfort. Maybe it's Alex Newhook. Like,
In an
we didn't-
ideal world, that's
we
your third
didn't
line
know
guy,
the answer
yeah.
to that question at the start of the year. JT Comfort did an admirable job filling that job for the regular
Definitely.
season. Did not do a good enough job in the postseason. I think it's fair to say both of those things. I will always be a little bit sad that we never really got to see the team they paid for.
The full power.
I
Man.
The team that
agree.
they built. We never got to see what they look like
I maybe could
as
have
a group.
at
Yeah.
least lived with everyone but Landeskog. You know, the Landeskog situation is unfortunate, but felt like the one that it was like, all right, they might just have to live without this guy. But even that, they couldn't do. Even everyone but Landeskog, I think they played like 2 games this year with that lineup.
Yeah.
So it was just tough all the way around.
Yeah. Well, and it didn't continue into the postseason. You lose Val Nichushkin after 2 games.
Like Jack Johnson,
Yeah.
before game 1, I know he's not that big of a piece, but
Ended up, I mean, you look at the difference between Jack Johnson and Josh Manson in the series, and Jack Johnson,
was the better, like arguably the Avs' fourth best guy.
It's funny
Like,
because still gets crushed
sure,
in shot metrics, and you're looking at it like still not a positive guy, still not able to move a puck, still not able to generate any offense, but he wasn't hurting you defensively,
yep.
and he wasn't taking penalties.
I know we're going long, but Alexander Georgiev and the gamble that they took
Yeah,
in
that
net,
one worked. It worked out as good as you could hope.
Yeah.
as good as you can hope. Like, I'm not going to
Talking about front office here and
get
this and that.
too carried away
this is a great
with heaping on
point,
the
though.
praises, but the affordable goalie tandem that they have and the fact that they have it for at least a little bit to come, especially in Georgiev specifically, at the price that they got, looks, I know there are differing opinions on this, but I think it looks good.
You have arguably
it's just good.
You
The
have-
other opinions are wrong.
arguably you have a top 5 tandem.
Yep.
Inarguably, you have a top 10 tandem,
Yep.
and you're spending $5.4 million on it.
a price that many teams are spending on one goalie.
Yeah. Look at what the Jets are going to have to give Connor Hellebuck to try and convince him to stay there.
Yep.
Because it's going to be a lot of money.
And then he's going to go get that money somewhere else.
Yeah. It's going to be Buffalo.
We got some pretty big super chats to get to here, so let's hit some of these. $5 from D Melly with no comment. We appreciate it. $10 from Randy, who says, missed my usual end of year dono to the best Avs pod out there. Too bummed last night to be watching. Haha, keep crushing it, DNVR. What a fun Mac and Miko watch this year. Go Avs 2023. Yep. There was a lot of fun stuff this year, even through all of the pain and trudging through what felt like a decade of a season. But appreciate the super chat. 27 Swede bucks from Flats, who says, compared to losing to Vegas in 21, this is not so bad.
I was devastated after that game. I was not devastated last night.
Yeah,
I wasn't.
And I get they're two separate years, and there's some level of compartmentalizing there, but having a cup makes it a lot easier.
Just not devastated. It was fine.
Thank you very much. Luke, our guy in Winnipeg with the insane $100 super
Used
chat.
to be known as Luke from Winnipeg.
Yeah. $100, incredibly generous, Luke. Thank you so much. That's ridiculous, man. And then $2 from Vaguely Sober, who just sends the heart. Yeah.
Sweaty boy season.
I know. Off season can't be sweaty boy season. It's got to be sleepy time season or something. And then $10 from Jared coming in late here. Thank you for the awesome content all year, and I'm looking forward to the dog days of summer pods. Tough year made better with this community. The NHL better watch out next season. Yeah, we talked about this the other night a little bit too, but very, very possible that the Avs could come with the fire lit under them next year, depending on how things go.
Yeah, and I'm excited to get to some of the offseason stuff. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Yep.
We talk about 2C, and the Avs have a lot of internal decisions that they need to make.
What are they going to do at the bottom of their D core? You've got 1 year left on Von Taves' deal.
Yeah, I mean, you have your whole bottom six is a free agent of some kind.
Everyone but LOC, basically.
It's LOC and Newhook needs a new deal.
RFA,
Byram needs a new deal.
Byram and Newhook will be interesting.
Yeah, I think Newhook probably played himself out of an interesting conversation contract.
That's where, I think it's interesting in that it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
I think for Byram, I have no idea.
For Byram, it's very, very hard to value.
Yep.
Where he had at times it was such an explosive regular season, and then postseason,
you wanted a little more for sure.
Yeah, he started out with his hair on fire and got a little bit worse as the series went on. You're left wanting a touch there, and I don't know.
A lot.
They have so many decisions to make.
Not to mention draft coverage. I think tomorrow we're probably going to talk about the Eagles, who have a chance to win their second round of the playoffs. Lots of stuff to get
Wednesday,
to.
right?
Yes.
Wednesday is game
3.
4. Yeah.
No, it is 4. You're right.
Math's hard. Don't do it on air, folks.
Yeah. Just don't do it, guys.
They just need their 3rd win.
There we go. There it is. Yep. Anyway.
And then they have 6 more rounds to go because the Pacific Division bracket is just outrageous.
Yep. Also, keep your eyes out for NHL caliber content with, I'm sure on our own pod, but maybe some other stuff coming up.
There is prospect stuff in the pipeline
For
too.
sure.
We can kind of put our attention back to what the Eagles have been doing in terms of development, what that's looking like.
Yep.
Someone in the chat had asked about Sean Behrens. He is returning to DU for another year. Very practical reasons. It's not a reflection of something that has gone wrong in his development. But he's still in the pipeline. He's still cooking. He'll just be at DU 1 more year.
Yep.
Will he still be an Avs prospect this time next year?
I mean, technically, he'd have to wait till August 15th, right?
Well, that's 2 years away. He's only going into his
Oh,
junior
you're saying
year.
they're going to trade him. I see what
Yes.
you're saying. Okay, yeah. I think he will be.
I guess it's going to, this is maybe where the Taves-Girard conversation influences the Barons conversation,
Not wrong.
honestly.
Yeah.
They held on to him at the deadline. I don't see them parting with him easily. Like, they've held on to him this long. They shipped out Bear and Hellison, so I don't know. Feels like they should hold on to him, but
Maybe they draft another D with their first round pick this year. Who knows?
maybe Sam Malinsky beats everybody up and becomes
Chad
number
has
one
already
dude.
decided on Tanner Melendek as the guy.
okay.
All right, then.
Yeah, he's a defenseman out of the Dub.
Either way,
It's real fun to watch, let me tell you. He looks like an Av to
Let
me.
him cook.
even in the off season, we'll be here 5 days a week for you, bringing you Avs content, NHL content, all the good stuff you guys know and love.
I
So
think tomorrow's a good Eagles conversation because we can answer this question. Are Foodie and Olsen in play for the bottom
we
six
will get
next
into
year?
that conversation tomorrow
Because
for sure.
I do think that organizationally there are some guys that you want to see in play for. You know, we're talking about they need to replace some of these jobs. Okay, well, Helm and Cogliano, whatever. I don't even know. Do they bring Morgan back? Do they give him a QO?
all things to be
yeah.
determined. Yeah.
But I do think that the Eagles conversation informs some of those decisions quite a bit.
All right. We're going to get out of here on that note. We appreciate all of y'all hanging out with us, even though you're probably sad about the Avs, because justifiable. We'll be back tomorrow, and we will talk to you then.